Imagine for a second that you are standing in the middle of a city.
Okay.
You look around, and honestly, it looks a little bit gray. It's efficient, it's serious, and it is very quiet.
Right.
You're surrounded by these towering glass skyscrapers, endless asphalt, and you see all these serious people in expensive suits checking their watches. They're rushing to their next meeting.
The classic corporate scene.
Exactly. To the naked eye, it looks like the definition of a generic, modern financial district. I mean, you could be in London, you could be in New York, or maybe Hong Kong.
But you aren't in any of those places. You're actually standing in Kitahama, Osaka.
Right. And if you just judge a book by its cover, Kitahama seems, well, a bit sterile. It's the business hub. It's where the money lives.
Yeah, that's the facade.
But if we peel back just one or two layers of that modern veneer, you realize that you aren't just standing in a business district. You are standing in the literal engine room where a feudal society transformed itself into a modern superpower.
That is the perfect way to frame it. Because looking at those glass towers, you would never guess that this specific grid of streets is actually a master of disguise.
A master of disguise. I like that.
It really is. It holds the scars and, frankly, the trophies of Japan's most explosive era.
Now, that is a big claim. We're talking about this shift from samurai swords to stock options happening in this one specific neighborhood.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
And that is exactly our mission for this deep dive.
Go lay it out for us.
We aren't just going to recite dates and names like a textbook. We're going on a virtual tour of sorts. We're looking for hidden gems, physical spots you can actually visit today in Kitahama, and we're connecting them to the high stakes and, honestly, sometimes dangerous historical stories that happen right there.
I love this concept. It's like time travel, but you can still get a really good cup of coffee while you do it. So we're using a really interesting stack of research titled Osaka Kitahama Research as our map today. And it covers 5 specific narratives, ranging from political intrigue inside a high-end restaurant to the origins of the pharmaceutical industry.
And what really stands out to me in this research is the continuity. You see, Osaka is historically the merchant city.
Right. Very distinct from Tokyo.
Exactly. Tokyo was the political capital. But in the Edo period, Kitahama was the center of the rice trade. And you have to remember, in feudal Japan, rice wasn't just food.
It was money.
It was currency. It was the absolute standard by which wealth was measured. So Kitahama was effectively the Federal Reserve, and the granary rolled into one.
So it basically has money in its DNA.
Deeply. But the drama really starts when that DNA has to mutate.
Okay.
When the Meiji Restoration hits in the late 1860s, Japan decides to modernize. It needs to stop thinking in rice and start thinking in cash, credit, and laws. And that friction, that painful pivot happened right here on these streets.
So let's start walking. Our first stop on this tour isn't a bank, and it's not a government office. It's a restaurant.
Yes.
Now, usually when we talk about history, we're talking about battlefields or palaces. Why are we starting at a dinner table?
Because in Japan, the real decisions often happen at the ryotei, traditional high-end restaurants. We're talking about a place called Kagairo Kitahama Honten.
Kagairo.
Yes. And it is actually still operating in Kitahama One-Combe today.
So you can go there right now, order a traditional kaiseki meal, and sit in the exact same room where history happened.
You can, though it might cost you a pretty penny today.
Yeah.
But we need to transport you back to early 1875. The mood back then wasn't about enjoying the food.
Right.
The Meiji government, the young revolutionaries who had just overthrown the shogun, they were in a complete meltdown.
Meltdown how? Because I always picture the Meiji Restoration as this smooth, inevitable march toward modernity.
Not at all. It was messy, chaotic, and very violent. By 1875, the government was fracturing. There was a massive, bitter split over foreign policy, specifically a debate called Sekineron.
That's the debate over whether to invade Korea, right? And the Taiwan expedition was tied up in that era, too.
Precisely. It absolutely tore the leadership apart.
Yeah.
Key figures like Saigo Takamori had already left in a huff. Then you had leaders like Kido Takayoshi and Itagaki Taisuke effectively quitting the government.
Why did they quit?
Because they felt the power was too concentrated in the hands of just a few oligarchs. The government was unstable, and there were serious whispers of civil war.
Right, so this is that moment where the revolutionary band is breaking up, so to speak?
The band was breaking up, and the instruments were about to be used as weapons. They desperately needed a neutral ground to bring everyone back to the table before the country collapsed entirely.
And Tokyo was just too hot, too political.
Exactly, so they chose Osaka. And specifically, they chose the private, discreet rooms of Kagairo.
And this event became known as the Osaka Conference of 1875.
Correct. And it wasn't just a single dinner. This was a grueling, month-long negotiation held between January and February.
Wow. A month.
Picture the giants of Japanese history. Okubo Toshimichi, who was the pragmatic strongman, Ito Hirobumi, the future prime minister, and the dissenters, Kido and Itagaki. They were all in this room.
Probably drinking sake, arguing until late in the night.
Definitely. Trying to stitch the country back together.
That is a lot of ego in one room. What was the actual sticking point? Was it just personal beef, or was it really about how the country should be run?
It was highly structural. Right. Itagaki and Kido wanted a constitution. They wanted a clear separation of powers. They argued that you couldn't run a modern nation with just a handful of guys from Satsuma and Choshu making all the rules behind closed doors.
So what came out of this month-long dinner party? Did they just agree to disagree?
No, they reached a monumental compromise. They agreed to establish the Genrun, which was an early form of a senate.
Okay.
And the Daishinin, which was the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
They also agreed to create an assembly of local governors.
Wait, so the concept of the Supreme Court in Japan was basically born in a restaurant?
Effectively, yes. This is what historians call the germination of constitutionalism in Japan.
That's incredible.
It was the moment the oligarchy admitted, okay, we can't just rule by force anymore, we need a system. Now, scholars debate how sincere this actually was. Some say Okubo just did it to shut the others up and consolidate his own power.
Right, trying to appease the opposition. But regardless of the intent, it set the trajectory.
It did. It set the path toward the Meiji Constitution.
It's fascinating to think about that fragility. We look back and think history is inevitable, but in that room, it could have gone either way. They could have flipped the table and gone back to war.
Absolutely. And when you visit Kagairo today, that is the hidden gem aspect.
Mm-hmm.
You aren't just looking at a menu or a beautiful garden.
Yeah.
You're looking at the site where the rule of law was negotiated over cups of tea. It's a striking reminder that political stability is often just a fragile agreement between people in a room.
Okay, so we've saved the government from collapse. But a stable government needs money.
It certainly does.
And that brings us to our next stop. We're walking down the street to the Osaka Exchange building.
Yes. Also in Kitahama, Wenchon. You really can't miss it. It has this magnificent white circular entrance, almost like a temple.
Yeah, and standing right in front is a very prominent statue of a man looking dignified and perhaps a little stern.
That's the one.
I've seen photos of this statue. He's wearing the full Meiji-era frock coat. Who is he?
That is Godai Tomoatsu. If Osaka has a father figure for its modern economy, it is him. To understand why he's standing there guarding the exchange, we have to go back to that DNA we talked about earlier.
The rice.
The rice standard. In the Edo period, this exact area was home to the famous rice markets. Daimyos, the feudal lords from all over Japan, would ship their rice here to be stored in giant warehouses.
Right.
And merchants would trade tickets for this rice. It was essentially the world's first futures market.
So Osaka was already doing highly sophisticated finance just with grain instead of digital numbers.
Exactly. They were trading derivatives before Wall Street even existed. But when the Meiji era hit, the rice standard collapsed.
Right. The currency became the yen.
Yes. Government bonds were issued.
Mm-hmm.
You needed a modern way to raise capital for these new things called joint stock companies.
And that's where Godai steps in.
Godai was a visionary. He realized that the merchant class of Osaka was brilliant at trading rice, but they were clueless about modern corporate structures.
They must have been terrified of it.
They were. He basically had to drag them, kicking and screaming, into modern capitalism. He pushed relentlessly for the founding of the Osaka Stock Exchange in 1878.
And where did they build it?
Smack dab on top of the old golden rice exchange sites.
I find that continuity so interesting. The physical location didn't change at all. The trading didn't really change. They just swapped the asset, rice out, stocks in.
It represents the economic transition of the entire nation, concentrated in one city block. It's a huge shift in value systems.
Yeah.
However, there is a weird little mystery here that the research highlights.
Oh.
A blank spot in history, actually. We know the stock exchange opened in 1878. We know Godai was the driving force. But the actual trading records from those very first days,
Yeah.
they are largely missing.
Really? You would think a stock exchange would be obsessive about records. That's the whole point of an exchange.
You would think so.
Hmm.
But you have to imagine the chaos of the moment. This was a completely new system. They were figuring out the rules of the game while they were playing it.
Wow.
There's a theory among historians that it was just so chaotic, a wild mix of old rice trading habits colliding with new Western regulations, that the record keeping just couldn't keep up.
I love the image of that. Samurai turned traders shouting orders, trying to figure out what a dividend is, while Godai watches from the balcony, hoping the whole thing doesn't implode.
It was the Wild West, but it worked. And looking at that statue today, you're looking at the man who plugged Osaka into the global financial grid.
Speaking of the global grid, let's cross the street. Because if the stock exchange represents the function of the new economy, the building right across from it represents the look.
Ah, you're talking about the Kitahama Retro building.
That's the one. It stands out like a sore thumb in a good way. You have all these massive modern glass skyscrapers, and then tucked right in between them is this cute brick building with a giant teapot sign out front.
Cute is definitely the modern reaction. But when it was built in 1912, it was intended to be very imposing.
It looks British, like something you'd see in London or Glasgow.
That is spot on. It is built in the Glasgow style, and that is not a coincidence. This building was originally constructed for a securities brokerage firm.
Wait, a brokerage firm in a tea house?
Well, it's a tea house now. But back then, why would a Japanese broker build a British-style office?
To look the part.
Exactly. It's about signaling. In the Meiji and Taisho eras, there's an obsession with progress looking Western. If you wanted to be taken seriously as a global player, you had to look the part.
Right.
The West was the center of the financial world, so you built in brick and stone. You imported the aesthetic to import the legitimacy.
So it was architectural diplomacy, like trust us with your money, we have bricks just like you do.
Precisely. It's what experts call cultural layering. They didn't just tear down Japanese culture, they layered this Western aesthetic on top of it to survive and signal legitimacy in a new geopolitical reality.
That makes a lot of sense.
But the most amazing thing about this building is simply that it is still there.
Because Osaka was bombed heavily in World War II, right?
It was flattened. And then, whatever survived the war usually got bulldozed in the 1980s bubble economy to build more high-rises.
Right, the real estate boom.
Yes. But this little brick building survived the B-29s and the real estate developers.
How did it pull that off?
Adaptation. It stopped trying to be a financial building. It transitioned into a commercial and cultural space. It was registered as a tangible cultural property, and now it serves British tea and cake.
There is something poetic about that. The traders are gone, the screaming is gone, but the building survived by becoming a place of leisure.
It challenges the idea that modernization always means destroying the old to build the new. Sometimes the old survives by changing its job description. It became a cultural asset rather than a financial one.
Okay, we've done politics, we've done finance, we've done architecture. Let's move to something that hits a bit closer to, well, the body. We're heading to Doshomachi.
Yes, just a short walk away from Kitahama. Doshomachi is known as the medicine town. And if you think the stock exchange has deep roots, Doshomachi goes back even further. We were talking about the early Edo period, around the 1620s to 1640s.
So almost 400 years ago, that is a very long time for a district to keep one single identity.
It is a remarkable path dependence. The Tokugawa shogunate was obsessed with control. They authorized a guild system here called Yakushu Nakama.
What did that guild actually do?
Basically, a merchant named Kanishi Kichimon set up a system where all raw medicine coming into or moving through Japan had to be inspected and distributed through this specific district.
That is a massive monopoly.
It was an absolute chokehold on the industry. But what it did was centralize expertise in a way we rarely see. If you were a doctor, a pharmacist, or a wholesaler, you had to come to Doshomachi. It became the Silicon Valley of herbs and powders.
And what blows my mind is that this isn't just a fun fact from history books. This is still true today, right?
That is the best part. Walk down Doshomachi today and look the company names on those sleek office buildings. Takeda, Shinogi, Mitsubishi Tanabe.
Huge names.
These are titans of the global pharmaceutical industry, and they are still headquartered or have their roots or museums on the exact same street where their ancestors were inspecting dried roots 400 years ago.
It's literally a company town that survived the fall of the samurai, the opening of the country, 2 world wars, and the internet age.
It beautifully illustrates the path dependence of an economy. It shows that once a cluster of knowledge is formed by a feudal decision, it is incredibly sticky. It's hard to move.
Yeah, that expertise just builds on itself layer by layer.
Exactly. But there is another layer here that I find fascinating. Right in the middle of these skyscrapers is a shrine.
The Sukune Hikona shrine?
Yes. It's dedicated to the deity of medicine and agriculture. And it's not just a tourist spot. You will see employees from these massive science-based pharmaceutical companies stopping by to pay their respects.
That seems like a contradiction to a lot of people. You have people developing cutting-edge mRNA vaccines or cancer treatments, and they are praying to a Shinto god for success.
It seems contradictory to the Western mind, perhaps. But in Japan, modern doesn't necessarily mean secular. It's that layering concept again. The science didn't replace the spirituality, it just sat down next to it. Which actually leads us perfectly to our final hidden gem.
The hidden shrines of Kitahama. We've been talking about big buildings and famous events, but there is something much quieter happening in the corners of this district.
Exactly. If you walk through the district, and remember, this is the ultra-modern financial hub, you will find tiny, unobtrusive shrines tucked into the strangest places.
Like where?
In the corner of a parking lot, in the shadow of a skyscraper courtyard, sometimes even on the roof of an office building.
I have actually seen this. You'll see a guy in a really sharp suit, clearly rushing to a meeting.
Right.
But he stops for 3 seconds, bows, claps, and then just keeps running.
That is the continuation of the merchant's prayer. In the Edo period, merchants prayed for their ships to survive storms and for the shipping routes to be safe. Today, the ships are supply chains and the storms are market volatility.
But the anxiety is exactly the same.
Exactly. It's a really humanizing cultural insight. We tend to think of finance as this cold, rational machine, algorithms and spreadsheets.
Pure math.
Right.
Ah.
But this challenges the view of Osaka as a purely secular, transactional city. It reveals a deep spiritual resilience underneath.
Modernization didn't erase the human need for a safety blanket.
It didn't. It just built skyscrapers around the metaphysical insurance.
Yeah.
People still need that reassurance, whether they're trading rice tickets or tech stocks.
So we've walked the tour. We've seen the restaurant that birthed the courts, the exchange that replaced rice with stocks, the retro building that used architecture as diplomacy, the medicine town that never moved, and the shrines that handle the anxiety of it all. What is the big picture here? What does Kitahama tell us about Japan?
If I had to synthesize it into a meta-analysis, it's defined by 2 words: transformation and layering.
Transformation and layering. Break that down for me.
Well, look at the timeline. It moved from a feudal hub with rice and medicine guilds to a modernization hub with stocks and Western buildings, and finally to a global financial center. But through all that, the history didn't vanish.
Right.
In many cities, history is put in a museum. It's behind glass. You look at it, you read a plaque, and you move on. But the meaningful reflection here is that in Kitahama, the history is functional. It's still going to work every morning.
That's very true. The restaurant is still serving food. The exchange is still trading. The medicine town is still selling drugs.
Exactly. It's not a ruin. It's a machine that has been running for 400 years. The parts have been upgraded, wood turned to brick, brick turned to glass, rice turned to data, but the function of the machine hasn't changed. It is still the engine room.
That is a really powerful way to look at a city. It's not just about what the buildings look like, it's about what the land itself is doing.
Precisely. And imagine standing in front of that retro building, looking across at the stock exchange, and just knowing that beneath your feet is the memory of the Edo rice markets. The layers are all right there.
Before we wrap up, though, I want to leave the listener with one thought that stood out to me from the research. We've talked a lot about the big names today. Godai, Okubo, the merchant princes, the people with statues.
The great men of history.
Right. But our source material points out a historiographical gap. We know what the elites were doing, but we don't really know much about the common clerks or the workers who actually powered this massive transition.
That's so true. The transition to modernization wasn't just powered by guys in top hats making deals at riotees. It was powered by thousands of invisible workers. The tea servers, the rickshaw pullers, the junior clerks filing the messy paperwork at the exchange.
And their daily lives are largely lost to us.
They are. The people who didn't get a statue.
So, when you visit Kitahama, stand in front of that statue of Godai. But then, look past him. Look at the empty space on the sidewalk. Wonder about the invisible stories. Imagine the thousands of people rushing by in 1878, terrified, excited, and exhausted, trying to build a new world. Their stories are the ones that really powered the engine.
A very humbling and important perspective to end on.
For everyone listening, next time you're walking through your own city, try to look for those functional layers. Don't just look at the architecture. Ask yourself what the street has been doing for the last 3 centuries.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the layers of Osaka. It's been quite a journey.
It certainly has. Thanks for having me.
Keep looking for those hidden layers, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.